we're settling into this range of interest rates for mortgages. It's most likely, if we see 5, I think that'd be awesome, but we're probably going to be in the 6 to 8% range. And I think as a society, we're slowly getting used to that idea. If we are thinking that in the next 6 months, we're going to see rates come down to 3%, you've got to give up on that one. Gary said he believes we won't see it in our lifetime again.
Won't see 3% interest rates in our lifetime again. May not see 4. Could be a while before we see 5. And again, it was just a good reset to our thinking around rates, because we had a lot of data that we covered, more than we could probably go into here, around why it's still important to buy a home over the long term. And one of the big reasons and takeaways for me was it helps you lock in your cost of living, right? So if you're waiting around for 3% interest rates, all you're doing is delaying the opportunity to build wealth. You're delaying the opportunity to lock in your cost of living, because we know that ain't going down over the long term.
Yep.
Again, a good reminder of how to think about what we're experiencing versus how we might feel about it after we just fell off a cliff.
Indeed. And even though we know affordability is an issue, right, in this market, because high prices, high interest rates, it requires more of a family's income to support housing, right? But that doesn't mean it's not the right time to buy a house.
Right.
We know that if you're going to be hanging on to a home over the long term, you will get your money back, right? And oh, by the way, if you're marrying the house, you're dating the mortgage rate. And there is an opportunity when rates do come back down again, which they will eventually, right? It's just we don't know how long that's going to take. It certainly looks like the Fed is going to have to get more aggressive. I mean, all of these other indicators that are pointing that inflation is being stubborn. The U.S. consumer is doing their job because they're the number one driver of the economy. And we know that the number one factor that affects the CPI, the inflation rate, is actually housing. You see this with these gurus who are on the internet who say, oh, you shouldn't be buying a home, you should rent. It's cheaper to rent than it is to own. I was fascinated to see that they actually did the research and put the numbers to that. And what they discovered was the first 2 years renting, you'd save more money than buying. But at year 3, the scales tip, right? They actually level out about year 3. And then if you look at over time, the difference is massive. So if you were renting and investing your savings, right, the difference between that and buying a home, again, this is all based on what you could afford to buy on your income. The differential is about $106,000.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating. And what we know is that this supply and demand situation that we're in right now is actually driving rents up.
When you think about it, Bruce, when the cost of owning the home, the cost of the money to own the home, the cost of the utilities at the home, when all that goes up, eventually the landlords will raise the rent. The cost of rent is equally less likely to start plummeting anytime soon, right?
Right.
And so why would you want to miss out on that gap in your personal wealth by renting when you could be owning, regardless of what might be happening in the moment?
We actually get a tax interest reduction for buying and owning a home, right? The government wants us to own homes.
Correct.
But what they're doing is not enough with regards to regulation to actually encourage builders to provide more product, right? More supply, because we know the demand is out there. It's a government issue, I think, Chase, that's going to actually have to influence all of this. Unless they offer tax incentives for builders to go and focus on that category, there's no reason for them to go there. And then that means this situation just gets exacerbated.
I think you're 100% right, Bruce. And I know that this can be a controversial topic, and yet you realize that most of these folks are simply doing what they should do in order to feed their families well, and that's going where you can make more money. So until you make it equally attractive to them to build starter homes again, right, which is going to be some sort of incentive, and maybe some sort of pretty hefty incentive, they're not going to. And there's really no other way to make them to. And how can you ask them to?